Hi there, my name is Oliver. Tonight I will be reading chapters 5 and 6 of The Star's My Destination by Alfred Bester. I won't be doing a recap tonight of chapters 3 and 4, but if you would prefer that I do recap earlier episodes in the future, please leave a comment to that effect, and I will resume doing so in chapters 7 and 8. Now, on to the story. Chapter 5. South of Saint-Guérin, near the Spanish-French border, is the deepest abyss in France, the Joffre Martel. Its caverns twist for miles under the Pyrenees. It is the most formidable cavern hospital on Terra. No patient has ever jaunted out of its pitch darkness. No patient has ever succeeded in getting his bearings and learning the jaunt coordinates of the black hospital depths. Short of prefrontal lobotomy, there are only 3 ways to stop a man from jaunting. A blow on the head producing concussion, sedation, which prevents concentration, and concealment of jaunt coordinates. Of the 3, the jaunting age considered concealment the most practical. The cells that line the winding passages of Joffre Martel are cut out of living rock. They are never illuminated. The passages are never illuminated. Infrared lamps flood the darkness. It is black light, visible only to guards and attendants wearing snooper goggles with specially treated lenses. For the patients, there is only the black silence of Joffre Martel, broken by the distant rush of underground waters. For Foyle, there was only the silence, the rushing, and the hospital routine. At 8 o'clock, or it may have been any hour in this timeless abyss, he was awakened by a bell. He arose and received his morning meal, slotted into the cell by pneumatic tube. It had to be eaten at once, for the china surrogate of cups and plates was timed to dissolve in 15 minutes. At 8:30, the cell door opened, and Foyle and hundreds of others shuffled blindly through the twisting corridors to sanitation. Here, still in darkness, they were processed like beef in a slaughterhouse, cleansed, shaved, irradiated, disinfected, dosed, and inoculated. Their paper uniforms were removed and sent back to the shops to be pulped. New uniforms were issued. Then they shuffled back to their cells, which had been automatically scrubbed out while they were in sanitation. In his cell, Foyle listened to interminable therapeutic talks, lectures, moral and ethical guidance for the rest of the morning. Then there was silence again, and nothing but the rush of distant water and the quiet steps of goggled guards in the corridors. In the afternoon came occupational therapy. The TV screen in each cell illuminated, and the patient thrust his hands into the shadow frame of the screen. He saw 3-dimensionally, and he felt the broadcast objects and tools. He cut hospital uniforms, sewed them, manufactured kitchen utensils, and prepared foods. Although actually he touched nothing, his motions were transmitted to the shops where the work was accomplished by remote control. After 1 short hour of this relief came the darkness and silence again. But every so often, once or twice a week, or perhaps once or twice a year, came the muffled thud of a distant explosion. The concussions were startling enough to distract Foyle from the furnace of vengeance that he stoked all through the silences. He whispered questions to the invisible figures around him in sanitation. "What's them explosions?" "Explosions?" "Blow-ups. Hear 'em a long way off me. Them's blue junts." "What?" "Blue junts. Every sometime a guy gets fed up with old Geoffrey. Can't take it no more, him. Jaunts into the wild blue yonder. Jesus." "Yep, don't know where they are, them. Don't know where they're going. Blue jaunt into the dark, and we hear 'em exploding in the mountains. Boom! Blue jaunt." He was appalled, but he could understand. The darkness, the silence, the monotony destroyed sense and brought on desperation. The loneliness was intolerable. The patients buried in Joffre Martel Prison Hospital looked forward eagerly to the morning sanitation period, for a chance to whisper a word and hear a word. But these fragments were not enough, and desperation came. Then there would be another distant explosion. Sometimes the suffering men would turn on each other, and then a savage fight would break out in sanitation. These were instantly broken up by the goggled guards, and the morning lecture would switch on the moral fiber record preaching the virtue of patience. Foyle learned the records by heart, every word, every click and crack in the tapes. He learned to loathe the voices of the lecturers, the understanding baritone, the cheerful tenor, the man-to-man bass. He learned to deafen himself to the therapeutic monotony and perform his occupational therapy mechanically. but he was without resources to withstand the endless solitary hours. Fury was not enough. He lost count of the days, of meals, of sermons. He no longer whispered in sanitation. His mind came adrift and he began to wander. He imagined he was back aboard Nomad, reliving his fight for survival. Then he lost even this feeble grasp on illusion and began to sink deeper and deeper into the pit of catatonia, of womb silence, womb darkness, and womb sleep. There were fleeting dreams. An angel hummed to him once. Another time she sang quietly. Thrice he heard her speak, "Oh God," and "God damn," and "Oh," in a heart-rending descending note. He sank into his abyss, listening to her. "There is a way out," his angel murmured in his ear, sweetly, comforting. Her voice was soft and warm, yet it burned with anger. It was the voice of a furious angel. "There is a way out." It whispered in his ear from nowhere, and suddenly, with the logic of desperation, it came to him that there was a way out of Joffre Martel. He had been a fool not to see it before. "Yes," he croaked, "there's a way out." There was a soft gasp, then a soft question. "Who's there?" "Me is all," Foyle said. "You know me." "Where are you?" "Here, where I always been, me." "But there's no one. I'm alone." "Got to thank you for helping me." "Hearing voices is bad," the furious angel murmured. "The first step off the deep end. I've got to stop." "You showed me the way out. Blue Jaunt." "Blue Jaunt? My God, this must be real. You're talking the gutter lingo. You must be real. Who are you?" "Gully Foyle." "But you're not in my cell. You're not even near. Men are in the north quadrant of Joffre Martel. Women are in the south. I'm south 900. Where are you?" "North 111.
You're a quarter of a mile away. How can we... Of course. It's the whisper line. I always thought that was a legend, but it's true. It's working now."
"Here I go, me," Foyle whispered. "Blue Jaunt."
"Foyle, listen to me. Forget the Blue Jaunt. Don't throw this away. It's a miracle."
"What's a miracle?"
"There's an acoustical freak in Joffre Martel. They happen in underground caves. A freak of echoes, passages, and whispering galleries. Old-timers call it the whisper line. I never believed them. No one ever did. But it's true. We're talking to each other over the whisper line. No one can hear us but us. We can talk, Foyle. We can plan. Maybe we can escape."
Her name was Gisbella McQueen. She was hot-tempered, independent, intelligent, and she was serving 5 years of cure in Joffre Martel for larceny. Gisbella gave Foyle a cheerfully furious account of her revolt against society.
"You don't know what jaunting's done to women, Gully. It's locked us up, sent us back to the Seraglio."
"What's Seraglio, girl?"
"A harem, a place where women are kept on ice. After 1,000 years of civilization, it says here, we're still property. Jaunting's such a danger to our virtue, our value, our mint condition, that we're locked up like gold plate in a safe. There's nothing for us to do, nothing respectable. No jobs, no careers, there's no getting out, Gully, unless you bust out and smash all the rules."
"Did you have to, Jez?"
"I have to be independent, Gully. I had to live my own life, and that's the only way society would let me. So I ran away from home and turned crook."
And Jiz went on to describe the lurid details of her revolt. The temper racket, the cataract racket, the honeymoon and obituary robs, the badger jaunt and the glim drop. Foyle told her about Nomad and Vorga, his hatred and his plans. He did not tell Gisbella about his face or the 20 millions in platinum bullion waiting out in the asteroids.
"What happened to Nomad?" Gisbella asked. "Was it like that man, Dagenham said? Was she blasted by an OS raider?"
"I don't know, me. Can't remember, girl."
"The blast probably wiped out your memory. Shock. And being marooned for 6 months didn't help. Did you notice anything worth salvaging from Nomad?"
"No."
"Did Dagenham mention anything?"
"No," Foyle lied.
"Then he must have another reason for hounding you into Joffre Martel. There must be something else he wants from Nomad."
"Yeah, Jez."
"But you were a fool trying to blow up Vorga like that. You're like a wild beast trying to punish the trap that injured it. Steel isn't alive. It doesn't think. You can't punish Vorga."
"Don't know what you mean, girl. Vorga passed me by."
"You punish the brain, Gully. The brain that sets the trap. Find out who was aboard Vorga. Find out who gave the order to pass you by. Punish him."
Yeah? How?
Learn to think, Gully. The head that can figure out how to get Nomad underway and how to put a bomb together ought to be able to figure that out. But no more bombs. Brains instead. Locate a member of Vorga's crew. He'll tell you who was aboard. Track them down. Find out who gave the order, then punish him. But it'll take time, Gully. Time and money, more than you've got.
I got a whole life, me.
They murmured for hours across the whisper line, their voices sounding small yet close to the ear. There was only one particular spot in each cell where the other could be heard, which was why so much time had passed before they discovered the miracle. But now they made up for lost time, and Jezbella educated Foyle.
If we ever break out of Jaffar Martel, Gully, it'll have to be together, and I'm not trusting myself to an illiterate partner.
Who's illiterate?
You are, Jezbella answered firmly. I have to talk guttery you half the time, me.
I can read and write.
And that's about all, which means that outside of brute strength you'll be useless.
Talk sense, you,
he said angrily. I am talking sense, me. What's the use of the strongest chisel in the world if it doesn't have an edge? We've got to sharpen your wits, Gully. Got to educate you, man, is all.
He submitted. He realized she was right. He would need training, not only for the bust-out, but for the search for Vorga as well. Jezbella was the daughter of an architect and had received an education. This she drilled into Foyle, leavened with the cynical experience of 5 years in the underworld. Occasionally he rebelled against the hard work, and then there would be whispered quarrels. But in the end he would apologize and submit again. And sometimes Jezbella would tire of teaching, and then they would ramble on, sharing dreams in the dark.
I think we're falling in love, Gully.
I think so too, Jez.
I'm an old hag, Gully, 105 years old. What are you like?
Awful.
How awful?
My face.
You make yourself sound romantic. Is it one of those exciting scars that make a man attractive?
No. You'll see when we meet us. That's wrong, isn't it, Jez? Just plain. When we meet. Period.
Good boy.
We will meet someday, won't we, Jez?
Soon, I hope, Gully.
Jezbella's faraway voice became crisp and businesslike.
But we've got to stop hoping and get down to work. We've got to plan and prepare.
From the underworld, Jezbella had inherited a mass of information about Jaffar Martel. No one had ever jaunted out of the cavern hospitals, but for decades the underworld had been collecting and collating information about them. It was from this data that Jezbella had formed her quick recognition of the whisper line that joined them. It was on the basis of this information that she began to discuss escape.
We can pull it off, Gully. Never doubt that for a minute. There must be dozens of loopholes in their security system.
No one's ever found them before.
No one's ever worked with a partner before. We'll pool our information and we'll make it.
He no longer shambled to sanitation and back. He felt the corridor walls, noted doors, noted their texture, counted, listened, deduced, and reported. He made a note of every separate step in the sanitation pens and reported them to Jiz. The questions he whispered to the men around him in the shower and scrub rooms had purpose. Together, Foyle and Jezbella built up a picture of the routine of Jaffar Martel and its security system. One morning, on the return from sanitation, he was stopped as he was about to step back into his cell.
Stay in line, Foyle. This is North 111. I know where to get off by now. Keep moving. But...
He was terrified.
You're changing me? Visitor to see you.
He was marched up to the end of the north corridor, where it met the 3 other main corridors that formed the huge cross of the hospital. In the center of the cross were the administration offices, maintenance workshops, clinics, and plants. Foyle was thrust into a room, as dark as his cell. The door was shut behind him. He became aware of a faint shimmering outline in the blackness. It was no more than the ghost of an image with a blurred body and a death's head. 2 black discs on the skull face were either eye sockets or infrared goggles.
"Good morning," said Saul Dagenham.
"You!"
Foyle exclaimed. "Me. I've got 5 minutes. Sit down. Chair behind you."
Foyle felt for the chair and sat down slowly.
"Enjoying yourself?" Dagenham inquired.
"What do you want, Dagenham?"
"There's been a change," Dagenham said dryly. "Last time we talked, your dialogue consisted entirely of go to hell."
"Go to hell, Dagenham, if it'll make you feel any better."
"Your repartee's improved. Your speech, too. You've changed," Dagenham said. "Changed a damn sight too much and a damn sight too fast. I don't like it. What's happened to you?"
"I've been going to night school."
"You've had 10 months in this night school."
10 months? Foyle echoed in amazement. That long?
10 months without sight and without sound. 10 months in solitary. You ought to be broke."
Oh, I'm broke, all right.
You ought to be whining. I was right, you're unusual. At this rate, it's going to take too long. We can't wait. I'd like to make a new offer.
Make it.
10% of Nomad's billion. 2 million.
2 million, Foyle exclaimed. Why didn't you offer that in the first place?
Because I didn't know your caliber. Is it a deal?
Almost. Not yet.
What else?
I get out of Jaffer Martel.
Naturally.
And someone else, too.
It can be arranged. Dagenham's voice sharpened. Anything else?
I get access to Presteign's files.
Out of the question. Are you insane? Be reasonable.
His shipping files.
What for?
A list of personnel aboard one of his ships.
Oh. Dagenham's eagerness revived. That I can arrange. Anything else?
No.
Then it's a deal. Dagenham was delighted. The ghostly blur of light arose from its chair. We'll have you out in 6 hours. We'll start arrangements for your friend at once. It's a pity we wasted this time, but no one can figure you, Foyle.
Why didn't you send in a telepath to work me over?
A telepath? Be reasonable, Foyle. There aren't 10 full telepaths in all the inner planets. Their time is earmarked for the next 10 years. We couldn't persuade one to interrupt his schedule for love or money.
I apologize, Dagenham. I thought you didn't know your business.
You very nearly hurt my feelings.
Now I know you're just lying.
You're flattering me.
You could have hired a telepath. For a cut in 20 million, you could have hired one easy.
The government would never...
They don't all work for the government. No, you've got something too hot to let a telepath get near.
The blur of light leaped across the room and seized Foyle. How much do you know, Foyle? What are you covering? Who are you working for? Dagenham's hands shook. Christ, what a fool I've been! Of course you're unusual. You're no common spaceman. I asked you, who are you working for? Foyle tore Dagenham's hands away from him.
No one, he said. No one except myself.
No one, huh? Including your friend in Jaffer Martel you're so eager to rescue? By God, you almost swindled me, Foyle. Tell Captain Yang Yovel I congratulate him. He's got a better staff than I thought.
Never heard of any Yang Yovel.
You and your colleague are going to rot here. It's no deal. You'll fester here. I'll have you moved to the worst cell in the hospital. I'll sink you to the bottom of Jaffer Martel. I'll... Guard, here! Foyle grasped Dagenham's throat, dragged him down to the floor, and hammered his head on the flagstones. Dagenham squirmed once and then was still. Foyle ripped the goggles off his face and put them on. Sight returned in soft red and rose lights and shadows. He was in a small reception room with a table and 2 chairs. Foyle stripped Dagenham's jacket off and put it on with 2 quick jerks that split the shoulders. Dagenham's cocked highwayman's hat lay on the table. Foyle clapped it over his head and pulled the brim down before his face. On opposite walls were 2 doors. Foyle opened one a crack. It led out to the north corridor. He closed it, leapt across the room, and tried the other. It opened onto a jaunt-proof maze. Foyle slipped through the door and entered the maze. Without a guide to lead him through the labyrinth, he was immediately lost. He began to run around the twists and turns and found himself back at the reception room. Dagenham was struggling to his knees. Foyle turned back into the maze again. He ran. He came to a closed door and thrust it open. It revealed a large workshop illuminated by normal light. 2 technicians working at a machine bench looked up in surprise. Foyle snatched up a sledgehammer, leapt on them like a caveman, and felled them. Behind him he heard Dagenham shouting in the distance. He looked around wildly, dreading the discovery that he was trapped in a cul-de-sac. The workshop was L-shaped. Foyle tore around the corner, burst through the entrance of another jaunt-proof maze, and was lost again. The Jaffer Martel alarm system began clattering. Foyle battered at the walls of the labyrinth with the sledge, shattered the thin plastic masking, and found himself in the infrared-lit southern corridor of the women's quadrant. 2 women guards came up the corridor, running hard. Foyle swung the sledge and dropped them. He was near the head of the corridor. Before him stretched a long perspective of cell doors, each bearing a glowing red number. Overhead, the corridor was lit by glowing red globes. Foyle stood on the tiptoe and clubbed the globe above him. He hammered through the socket and smashed the current cable. The entire corridor went dark, even to goggles.
Evens us up, all in the dark now.
Foyle gasped and tore down the corridor, feeling the wall as he ran and counting cell doors. Gisbella had given him an accurate word picture of the south quadrant. He was counting his way towards South 900. He blundered into a figure, another guard. Foyle hacked at her once with his sledge. She shrieked and fell. The women patients began shrieking. Foyle lost count, ran on, stopped.
Jez! He bellowed. He heard her voice. He encountered another guard, disposed of her, ran, located Jezbella's cell. Gully, for God's sake! Her voice was muffled. Get back, girl, back! He hammered thrice against the door with his sledge, and it burst inward. He staggered in and fell against a figure. Jez, he gasped. Excuse me, was passing by. Thought I'd drop in. Gully, in the name of... Yeah, hell of a way to meet, huh? Come on, out, girl, out. He dragged her out of the cell. We can't try a break through the offices. They don't like me back there. Which way to your sanitation pens? Gully, you're crazy. Whole quadrant's dark. I smashed the power cable. We've got half a chance. Go, girl, go. He gave her a powerful thrust, and she led him down the passages to the automatic stalls of the women's sanitation pens. While mechanical hands removed their uniforms, soaped, soaked, sprayed, and disinfected them, Foyle felt for the glass pane of the medical observation window. He found it, swung the sledge, and smashed it. Get in, Jez. He hurled her through the window and followed. They were both stripped, greasy with soap, slashed, and bleeding. Foyle slipped and crashed through the blackness, searching for the door through which the medical officers entered. Can't find the door, Jez. Door from the clinic, Shh! But be quiet, Gully. A soapy hand found his mouth and clamped over it. She gripped his shoulder so hard that her fingernails pierced his skin. Through the bedlam in the cavern sounded the clatter of steps close at hand. Guards were running blindly through the sanitation stalls. The infrared lights had not yet been repaired. They may not notice the window, Jezbella hissed. Be quiet. They crouched on the floor. Steps trampled through the pens in bewildering succession. Then they were gone. All clear now, Jezbella whispered. But they'll have searchlights any minute. Come on, Gully, out. But the door to the clinic, Jez, I thought. There is no door. They use spiral stairs and they pull them up. They've thought of this escape, too. We'll have to try the laundry lift. God knows what good it'll do us. Oh, Gully, you fool, you utter fool. They climbed through the observation window back into the pens. They searched through the darkness for the lifts by which soiled uniforms were removed and fresh uniforms issued. And in the darkness, the automatic hands again soaped, sprayed, and disinfected them. They could find nothing. The caterwauling of a siren suddenly echoed through the caverns, silencing all other sound. There came a hush as suffocating as the darkness. They're using the G-phone to track us, Gully. The what? Geophone. It can trace a whisper through half a mile of solid rock. That's why they've sirened for silence. The laundry lift. Can't find it. Then come on. Where? We're running. Where? I don't know, but I'm not getting caught flat-footed. Come on, the exercise will do you good. Again he thrust Jezbella before him, and they ran, gasping and stumbling, through the blackness, down into the deepest reaches of South Quadrant. Jezbella fell twice, blundering against turns and passages. Foyle took the lead and ran, holding the 20-pound sledge in his hand. The handle extended before him as an antenna. Then they crashed into a blank wall and realized they had reached the dead end of the corridor. They were boxed, trapped. What now? I don't know. Looks like the dead end of my ideas, too. We can't go back for sure. I clobbered Dagenham in the offices. Hate that man. Looks like a poison label. You got a flash, girl? Oh, Gully, Gully, Jezbella sobbed. Was counting on you for ideas. No more bombs, you said. Wish I had one now. Could... Wait a minute. He touched the oozing wall against which they were leaning. He felt the checkerboard indentations of mortar seams. Bulletin from Gully Foyle. This isn't a natural cave wall. It's made. Brick and stone, feel. Jezbella felt the wall. So? Means this passage don't end here. Goes on. They blocked it off. Out of the way. He shoved Jezbella up the passage, ground his hands into the floor to grit his soapy palms, and began swinging the sledge against the wall. He swung in steady rhythm, grunting and gasping. The steel sledge struck the wall with the blunt concussion of stones struck underwater. They're coming, Jez said. I hear them. The blunt blows took on a crumbling, crushing overtone. There was a whisper, then a steady pebble fall of loose mortar. Foyle redoubled his efforts. Suddenly there was a crash, and a gush of icy air blew in their faces. Through, Foyle muttered. He attacked the edges of the hole, pierced through the wall with ferocity. Bricks, stones, and old mortar flew. Foyle stopped and called Jezbella. Try it. He dropped the sledge, seized her, and held her up to the chest-high opening. She cried out in pain as she tried to wriggle past the sharp edges. Foyle pressed her relentlessly until she got her shoulders and then her hips through. He let go of her legs and heard her fall on the other side. Foyle pulled himself up and tore himself through the jagged breach in the wall. He felt Jezbella's hands trying to break his fall as he crashed down in a mass of loose brick and mortar. They were both through into the icy blackness of the unoccupied caverns of Joffre Martel. Miles of unexplored grottos and caves.
By God, we'll make it yet, Foyle mumbled.
I don't know if there's a way out, Gully. Gisbilla was shaking with cold. Maybe this is all cul-de-sac, walled off from the hospital.
There has to be a way out.
I don't know if we can find it.
We've got to find it. Let's go, girl.
They blundered forward in the darkness. Foyle tore the useless set of goggles from his eyes. They crashed against ledges, corners, low ceilings. They fell down slopes and steep steps. They climbed over a razorback ridge to a level plain, and their feet shot out from under them. Both fell heavily to a glassy floor. Foyle felt it and touched it with his tongue.
Ice, he muttered. Good sign. We're in an ice cavern, Jiz. Underground glacier.
They arose shakily, straddling their legs and working their way across the ice that had been forming in the Joffre Martel abyss for millennia. They climbed into a forest of stone saplings that were stalagmites and stalactites, thrusting up from the jagged floor and down from the ceilings. The vibrations of every step loosened the huge stalactites. Ponderous stone spears thundered down from overhead. At the edge of the forest, Foyle stopped, reached out and tugged. There was a clear metallic ring. He took Gisbella's hands and placed the long tapering cone of a stalagmite in it.
Kane, he grunted. Use it like a blind man.
He broke off another, and they went tapping, feeling, stumbling through the darkness. There was no sound but the gallop of panic, their gasping breath and racing hearts, the taps of their stone canes, the multitudinous drip of water, the distant rushing of the underground river beneath Joffre Martel.
Not that way, girl.
Foyle nudged her shoulder.
More to the left.
Have you the faintest notion where we're headed, Gully?
Down, Jiz. Follow any slope that leads down.
You've got an idea?
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Brains instead of bombs.
Brains instead of... Gisbilla shrieked with hysterical laughter. You exploded in the south quadrant with a sledgehammer. That's your idea of brains instead of...
She brayed and hooted beyond all control until Foyle grasped her and shook her.
Shut up, Jiz. If they're tracking us by G-phone, they could hear you from Mars.
Sorry, Gully, sorry, She took a breath. Why down?
The river, the one we hear all the time. It must be near. It probably melts off the glacier back there.
The river?
Only sure way out. It must break out of the mountain somewhere. We'll swim.
Gully, you're insane.
What's the matter, you? You can't swim.
I can swim, but...
Then we've got to try. Got to, Jiz. Come on.
The rush of the river grew louder as their strength began to fail. Gisbilla pulled to a halt at last, gasping.
Gully, I've got to rest.
Too cold. Keep moving.
I can't.
Keep moving.
He felt for her arm.
Get your hands off me,
she cried furiously. In an instant, she was all spitfire. He released her in amazement.
What's the matter with you? Keep your head, Jiz. I'm depending on you.
For what? I told you we had to plan, work out an escape, and now you've trapped us into this.
I was trapped myself. Dagenham was going to change my cell. No more whisper line for us. I had to, Jiz. And we're out, aren't we?
Out where? Lost in Joffre Martel, looking for a damned river to drown in. You're a fool, Gully, and I'm an idiot for ever letting you trap me into this. Damn you! Damn you! You pull everything down to your imbecile level, and you've pulled me down too. Run, fight, punch, that's all you know. Beat, break, blast, destroy... Gully!
Gisbilla screamed. There was a clatter of loose stone in the darkness, and her scream faded down and away to a heavy splash. Foyle heard the thrash of her body in water. He leapt forward, shouted, "Jiz!" and staggered over the edge of a precipice. He fell and struck the water flat with a stunning impact. The icy river enclosed him, and he could not tell where the surface was. He struggled, suffocated, felt the swift current drag him against the chill slime of rocks, and then was borne bubbling to the surface. He coughed and shouted. He heard Gisbilla answer, her voice faint and muffled by the roaring torrent. He swam with the current, trying to overtake her. He shouted and heard her answering voice growing fainter and fainter. The roaring grew louder, and abruptly he was shot down the hissing sheet of a waterfall. He plunged to the bottom of a deep pool and struggled once more to the surface. The whirling current entangled him with a cold body bracing itself against a smooth rock wall.
"Jiz!"
"Gully, thank God!"
They clung together for a moment while the water tore at them.
"Gully!"
Gisbilla coughed.
"It goes through here."
"The river?"
"Yes."
He squirmed past her, bracing himself against the wall, and felt the mouth of an underwater tunnel. The current was sucking them into it.
"Hold on,"
Foyle gasped. He explored to the left and right. The walls of the pool were smooth without handhold.
"We can't climb out. Have to go through."
"There's no air, Gully, no surface."
"Couldn't be forever. We'll hold our breath."
"It could be longer than we can hold our breath."
"Have to gamble."
"I can't do it."
You must. No other way. Pump your lungs. Hold on to me.
They supported each other in the water, gasping for breath, filling their lungs. Foyle nudged Gisbella toward the underwater tunnel.
You go first. I'll be right behind. Help you if you get into trouble.
Trouble!
Gisbella cried in a shaking voice. She submerged and permitted the current to suck her into the tunnel mouth. Foyle followed. The fierce waters drew them down, 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 caroming from side to side of a tunnel that had been worn glass smooth. Foyle swam close behind Gisbella, feeling her thrashing legs beat his head and shoulders. They shot through the tunnel until their lungs burst and their blind eyes started. Then there was a roaring pain and a surface, and they could breathe. The glassy tunnel sides were replaced by jagged rocks. Foyle caught Gisbella's leg and seized a stone projection at the side of the river.
Got to climb out here, he shouted.
What?
Got to climb out. You hear that roaring up ahead? Cataracts, rapids. Be torn to pieces. Out, Giz.
She was too weak to climb out of the water. He thrust her body up onto the rocks and followed. They lay on the dripping stones, too exhausted to speak. At last Foyle got wearily to his feet.
Have to keep on, he said. Follow the river. Ready?
She could not answer. She could not protest. He pulled her up and they went stumbling through the darkness, trying to follow the bank of the torrent. The boulders they traversed were gigantic, standing like dolmens, heaped, jumbled, scattered into a labyrinth. They staggered and twisted through them and lost the river. They could hear it in the darkness, but they could not get back to it. They could get nowhere.
Lost, Foyle grunted in disgust. We're lost again. Really lost this time. What are we going to do?
Gisbella began to cry. She made helpless yet furious sounds. Foyle lurched to a stop and sat down, drawing her down with him.
Maybe you're right, girl, he said wearily. Maybe I am a damned fool. I got us trapped in this no-jaunt jam, and we're licked.
She didn't answer.
So much for brain work. Hell of an education you gave me.
He hesitated.
You think we ought to try backtracking to the hospital?
We'll never make it.
Guess not. Was just practicing my brain. Should we start a racket, make a noise so they can track us by G-phone?
They'd never hear us, never find us in time.
We could make enough noise. You could knock me around a little. Be a pleasure for both of us.
Shut up.
What a mess.
He sagged back, cushioning his head on a tuft of soft grass.
At least I had a chance aboard Nomad. There was food, and I could see where I was trying to go. I could...
He broke off and sat bolt upright.
Jez!
Don't talk so much.
He felt the ground under him and clawed up sods of earth and tufts of grass. He thrust them into her face.
Smell this, he laughed. Taste it, it's grass, Jez. Earth and grass. We must be out of Joffre Martel.
What?
It's night outside. Pitch black, overcast. We came out of the caves and never knew it. We're out, Jez. We've made it.
They leapt to their feet, peering, listening, sniffing. The night was impenetrable, but they heard the soft sigh of night winds, and the sweet scent of green, growing things came to their nostrils. Far in the distance, a dog barked.
My God, Gully,
Gisbella whispered incredulously.
You're right. We're out of Joffre Martel. All we have to do is wait for dawn.
She laughed. She flung her arms about him and kissed him, and he returned the embrace. They babbled excitedly. They sank down on the soft grass again, weary but unable to rest, eager, impatient, all life before them.
Hello, Gully. Darling Gully. Hello, Gully, after all this time.
Hello, Jez.
I told you we'd meet someday. Someday soon. I told you, darling, and this is the day.
The night.
The night, so it is. But no more murmuring in the night along the whisper line. No more night for us, Gully dear.
Suddenly they became aware that they were nude, lying close, no longer separated. Gisbella fell silent but did not move. He clasped her, almost angrily, and enveloped her with a desire that was no less than hers. When dawn came, he saw that she was lovely, long and lean, with smoky red hair and a generous mouth. But when dawn came, she saw his face. Chapter 6. Harley Baker, M.D., had a small general practice in Montana, Oregon, which was legitimate and barely paid for the diesel oil he consumed each weekend, participating in the rallies for vintage tractors, which were the vogue in Sahara. His real income was earned in his freak factory in Trenton, to which Baker jaunted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. There, for enormous fees and no questions asked, Baker created monstrosities for the entertainment business and refashioned skin, muscle, and bone for the underworld. Looking like a male midwife, Baker sat on the cool veranda of his Spokane mansion, listening to Gisbella McQueen finish the story of her escape. Once we hit the open country outside Joffre Martel, it was easy. We found a shooting lodge, broke in, and got some clothes.
There were guns there, too, lovely old steel things for killing with explosives. We took them and sold them to some locals. Then we bought rides to the nearest jaunt stage we had memorized.
Which?
Biarritz.
Traveled by night, eh?
Naturally.
Do anything about Foyle's face?
We tried makeup, but that didn't work. The damn tattooing showed through. Then I bought a dark-skinned surrogate and sprayed it on.
Did that do it?
No, Jiz said angrily. You have to keep your face quiet or else the surrogate cracks and peels. Foyle couldn't control himself. He never can. It was hell.
Where is he now?
Sam Quat's got him in tow.
I thought Sam retired from the rackets.
He did, Gisbella said grimly. But he owes me a favor. He's minding Foyle. They're circulating on the jaunt to stay ahead of the cops.
Interesting, Baker murmured. Haven't seen a tattoo case in all my life. Thought it was a dead art. I'd like to add him to my collection. You know I collect curios, Jiz.
Everybody knows that zoo of yours in Trenton, Baker. It's ghastly.
I picked up a genuine fraternal cyst last month, Baker began enthusiastically.
I don't want to hear about it, Jiz snapped, and I don't want Foyle in your zoo. Can you get the muck off his face? Clean it up? He says they were stymied at General Hospital.
They haven't had my experience, dear. I seem to remember reading something once, somewhere. Now, where did I... Wait a minute.
Baker stood up and disappeared with a faint pop. Gisbella paced the veranda furiously until he reappeared 20 minutes later, with a tattered book in his hands and a triumphant expression on his face.
Got it, Baker said. Saw it in the Caltech stacks 3 years ago. You may admire my memory.
To hell with your memory. What about his face?
It can be done.
Baker flipped the fragile pages and meditated.
Yes, it can be done. Indigo tin disulfonic acid. I may have to synthesize the acid, but...
Baker closed the text and nodded emphatically.
I could do it. Only it seems a pity to tamper with that face if it's as unique as you describe.
Will you get off your hobby? Gisbella exclaimed in exasperation. We're hot, understand? The first that ever broke out of Joffre Martel. The cops won't rest until they've got us back. This is extra special for them.
But...
How long do you think we can stay out of Joffre Martel with Foyle running around with that tattooed face?
What are you so angry about?
I'm not angry, I'm explaining.
He'd be happy in the zoo, Baker said persuasively. And he'd be undercover there. I'd put him in the room next to the Cyclops girl.
The zoo is out, that's definite.
All right, dear. But why are you worried about Foyle being recaptured? It won't have anything to do with you.
Why should you worry about me worrying? I'm asking you to do a job. I'm paying for the job.
It'll be expensive, dear, and I'm fond of you. I'm trying to save you money.
No, you're not.
Then I'm curious.
Then let's say I'm grateful. He helped me. Now I'm helping him.
Baker smiled cynically. Then let's help him by giving him a brand new face.
No.
I thought so. You want his face cleaned up because you're interested in his face.
Damn you, Baker, will you do the job or not?
It'll cost 5,000.
Break that down.
1,000 to synthesize the acid, 3,000 for the surgery, and 1,000 for...
Your curiosity?
No, dear.
Baker smiled again.
1,000 for the anesthetist.
Why anesthesia?
Baker reopened the ancient text. It looks like a painful operation. You know how they tattoo? They take a needle, dip it in dye, and hammer it into the skin. To bleach that dye out, I'll have to go over his face with the needle, pore by pore, and hammer in the indigo tin disulfonic. It'll hurt.
Gisbella's eyes flashed. Can you do it without the dope?
I can, dear, but Foyle...
To hell with Foyle. I'm paying 4,000. No dope, Baker. Let Foyle suffer.
Jiz, you don't know what you're letting him in for.
I know. Let him suffer. She laughed so furiously that she startled Baker. Let his face make him suffer, too. Baker's Freak Factory occupied a round brick 3-story building that had once been a roundhouse in a suburban railway yard, before jaunting ended the need for suburban railroads. The ancient ivy-covered roundhouse was alongside the Trenton rocket pits, and the rear windows looked out on the mouths of the pits, thrusting their anti-grav beams upward. And Baker's patients could amuse themselves watching the spaceships riding silently up and down the beams, their portholes blazing, recognition signals blinking, their hulls rippling with St. Elmo's fire as the atmosphere carried off the electrostatic charges built up in outer space. The basement floor of the factory contained Baker's zoo of anatomical curiosities, natural freaks and monsters bought and or abducted.
Baker, like the rest of the world, was passionately devoted to these creatures, and spent long hours with them, drinking in the spectacle of their distortions, the way other men saturated themselves with the beauty of art. The middle floor of the roundhouse contained bedrooms for post-operative patients, laboratories, staff rooms, and kitchens. The top floor contained the operating theaters. In one of the latter, a small room usually used for retinal experiments, Baker was at work on Foyle's face. Under a harsh battery of lamps, he bent over the operating table, working meticulously with a small steel hammer and a platinum needle. Baker was following the pattern of the old tattooing on Foyle's face, searching out each minute scar in the skin and driving the needle into it. Foyle's head was gripped in a clamp, but his body was unstrapped. His muscles writhed at each tap of the hammer, but he never moved his body. He gripped the sides of the operating table.
"Control," he said through his teeth. "You wanted me to learn control, Jizz. I'm practicing."
He winced. "Don't move," Baker ordered.
"I'm playing it for laughs."
"You're doing all right, son," Sam Quat said, looking sick. He glanced sidelong at Gisbella's furious face. "What do you say, Jiz?" "He's learning." Baker continued dipping and hammering the needle.
"Listen, Sam,"
Foyle mumbled, barely audible.
"Jiz told me you own a private ship. Crime pays, huh?"
"Yeah, crime pays. I got a little four-man job. Twin jet. Kind they call a Saturn Weekender."
"Why Saturn Weekender?"
"Because a weekend on Saturn would last 90 days. She can carry food and fuel for 3 months."
"Just right for me,"
Foyle muttered. He writhed and controlled himself.
"Sam, I want to rent your ship."
"What for?"
"Something hot."
"Legitimate?"
"No."
"Then it's not for me, son. I've lost my nerve. Jaunting the circuit with you one step ahead of the cops showed me that. I've retired for keeps. All I want is peace."
"I'll pay 50,000. Don't you want 50,000? You could spend Sundays counting it."
The needle hammered remorselessly. Foyle's body was twitching at each impact. "I already got 50,000. I got 10 times that in cash in a bank in Vienna." Quat reached into his pocket and took out a ring of glittering radioactive keys. "Here's the key for the bank. This is the key to my place in Joburg. 20 rooms, 20 acres. This here's the key to my weekender in Montauk. You ain't tempting me, son. I quit while I was ahead. I'm jaunting back to Joburg and live happy for the rest of my life."
"Let me have the weekender. You can sit safe in Joburg and collect."
"Collect when?"
"When I get back."
"You want my ship on trust and a promise to pay?"
"A guarantee."
Quat snorted. "What guarantee?"
"It's a salvage job in the asteroids. Ship named Nomad."
"What's on the Nomad? What makes the salvage pay off?"
"I don't know."
"You're lying."
"I don't know," Foyle mumbled stubbornly. "But there has to be something valuable. Ask Jizz."
"Listen," Quat said. "I'm going to teach you something. We do business legitimate, see? We don't slash and scalp. We don't hold out. I know what's on your mind. You got something juicy, but you don't want to cut anybody else in on it. That's why you're begging for favors." Foyle writhed under the needle, but still, gripped in the vice of his possession, he was forced to repeat.
"I don't know, Sam. Ask Jizz."
"If you've got an honest deal, make an honest proposition," Quat said angrily. "Don't come prowling around like a damn tattooed tiger figuring how to pounce. We're the only friends you got. Don't try to slash and scalp." Quat was interrupted by a cry torn from Foyle's lips. "Don't move," Baker said in an abstracted voice. "When you twitch your face, I can't control the needle." He looked hard and long at Gisbella. Her lips trembled. Suddenly she opened her purse and took out 2 500 banknotes. She dropped them alongside the beaker of acid. "We'll wait outside," she said. She fainted in the hall. Quat dragged her to a chair and found a nurse who revived her with aromatic ammonia. She began to cry so violently that Quat was frightened. He dismissed the nurse and hovered until the sobbing subsided. "What the hell has been going on?" he demanded. "What was that money supposed to mean?" "It was blood money." "For what?" "I don't want to talk about it." "Are you all right?"
"No."
"Anything I can do?"
"No."
There was a long pause. Then Gisbella asked in a weary voice,
"Are you going to make that deal with Gully?"
"Me? No. Sounds like 1,000 to 1 shot."
"There has to be something valuable in the Nomad. Otherwise Dagenham wouldn't have hounded Gully."
"I'm still not interested. What about you?"
"Me? Not interested either. I don't want any part of Gully Foyle again.
After another pause, Quad asked, "Can I go home now?"
You've had a rough time, haven't you, Sam?
I think I died about 1,000 times nursemaiding that tiger around the circuit.
I'm sorry, Sam.
I had it coming to me after what I did to you when you were copped in Memphis.
Running out on me was only natural, Sam.
We always do when it's natural, only sometimes we shouldn't do it.
I know, Sam, I know.
And you spend the rest of your life trying to make up for it. I figure I'm lucky, Jiz. I was able to square it tonight. Can I go home now?
Back to Joburg and the happy life?
Uh-huh.
Don't leave me alone yet, Sam. I'm ashamed of myself.
What for?
Cruelty to dumb animals.
What's that supposed to mean?
Never mind. Hang around a little. Tell me about the happy life. What's so happy about it?
Well, Quat said reflectively, it's having everything you wanted when you were a kid. If you can have everything at 50 that you wanted when you were 15, you're happy. Now, when I was 15...
And Quat went on, describing the symbols, ambitions, and frustrations of his boyhood, which he was now satisfying, until Baker came out of the operating theater. Finished? Gisbella asked eagerly.
Finished. After I put him under, I was able to work faster. They're bandaging his face now. He'll be out in a few minutes.
Weak?
Naturally.
How long before the bandages come off?
6 or 7 days.
His face will be clean?
I thought you weren't interested in his face, dear. It ought to be clean. I don't think I missed a spot of pigment. You may admire my skill, Gisbella. Also my sagacity. I'm going to back Foyle's salvage trip. What? Quat laughed. You taking 1,000-to-1 gamble, Baker? I thought you were smart. I am. The pain was too much for him and he talked under the anesthesia. There's 20 million in platinum bullion aboard the Nomad. 20 million!
Sam Quat's face darkened and he turned on Gisbella, but she was furious too. Don't look at me, Sam. I didn't know. He held out on me too. Swore he never knew why Dagenham was hounding him.
It was Dagenham who told him, Baker said. He let that slip too.
I'll kill him, Gisbella said. I'll tear him apart with my own 2 hands, and you won't find anything inside his carcass but black rot. He'll be a curio for your zoo, Baker. I wish to God I'd let you have him. The door of the operating theater opened, and 2 orderlies wheeled out a trolley on which Foyle lay, twitching slightly. His entire head was one white globe of bandage.
Is he conscious?
Quad asked Baker. I'll handle this, Gisbella burst out. I'll talk to the son of a... Foyle! Foyle answered faintly through the mask of bandage. As Gisbella drew a furious breath for her onslaught, one wall of the hospital disappeared and there was a clap of thunder that knocked them to their feet. The entire building rocked from repeated explosions, and through the gaps in the walls uniformed men began jaunting in from the streets outside, like rooks swooping into the gut of a battlefield.
"Raid!" Baker shouted. "Raid!" "Christ Jesus!" Quat shook.
The uniformed men were swarming all over the building, shouting,
"Foyle! Foyle! Foyle! Foyle!"
Baker disappeared with a pop. The attendants jaunted too, deserting the trolley on which Foyle waved his arms and legs feebly, making faint sounds.
"It's a goddamn raid!" Quat shook Gisbella. "Go, girl, go!"
"We can't leave Foyle!" Gisbella cried.
"Wake up, girl, go!"
"We can't run out on him!" Gisbella seized the trolley and ran it down the corridor. Quat pounded alongside her. The roaring in the hospital grew louder.
"Foyle! Foyle! Foyle!" "Leave him, for God's sake," Quat urged. "Let them have him."
"No!"
"It's a lobo for us, girl, if they get us."
"We can't run out on him." They skidded around a corner into a shrieking mob of post-operative patients, birdmen with fluttering wings, mermaids dragging themselves along the floor like seals, hermaphrodites, giants, pygmies, 2-headed twins, centaurs, and a mewling sphinx. They clawed at Gisbella and Quat in terror. "Get him off the trolley!" Gisbella yelled. Quat yanked Foyle off the trolley. Foyle came to his feet and sagged. Gisbella took his arm, and between them, Sam and Giz hauled him through a door into a ward filled with Baker's temporal freaks. Subjects with accelerated time sense, darting about the ward with the lightning rapidity of humming birds and emitting piercing bat-like squeals. "Jaunt him out, Sam!"
"After the way he tried to cross and scalp us?"
"We can't run out on him, Sam. You ought to know that by now. Jaunt him out. Caster's place." Gisbella helped Quat haul Foyle to his shoulder. The temporal freaks seemed to fill the ward with shrieking streaks. The ward doors burst open. A dozen bolts from pneumatic guns whined through the ward, dropping the temporal patients in their gyrations. Quat was slammed back against a wall, dropping Foyle.
A black and blue bruise appeared on his temple.
"Get to hell out of here," Quat roared. "I'm done."
"Sam!"
"I'm done. Can't jaunt. Go, girl."
Trying to shake off the concussion that prevented him from jaunting, Quat straightened and charged forward, meeting the uniformed men who poured into the ward. Gisbella took Foyle's arm and dragged him out of the back of the ward, through a pantry, a clinic, a laundry supply, and down flights of ancient stairs that buckled and threw up clouds of termite dust. They came into a victual cellar. Baker Zoo had broken out of their cells in the chaos and were raiding the cellar like bees, glutting themselves with honey in an attacked hive. A Cyclops girl was cramming her mouth with handfuls of butter scooped from a tub. Her single eye above the bridge of her nose leered at them. Gisbella dragged Foyle through the victual cellar, found a bolted wooden door, and kicked it open. They stumbled down a flight of crumbling steps and found themselves in what had once been a coal cellar. The concussions and roarings overhead sounded deeper and hollow. A chute slot on one side of the cellar was barred with an iron door held with iron clamps. Gisbella placed Foyle's hands on the clamps. Together they opened them and climbed out of the cellar through the coal chute. They were outside the freak factory, huddled against the rear wall. Before them were the Trenton rocket pits, and as they gasped for breath, Giz saw a freighter come sliding down an anti-grav beam into a waiting pit. Its portholes blazed, and its recognition signals blinked like a lurid neon sign, illuminating the back wall of the hospital. A figure leaped from the roof of the hospital. It was Sam Quat, attempting a desperate flight. He sailed out into space, arms and legs flailing, trying to reach the upthrusting anti-grav beam of the nearest pit, which might catch him in mid-flight and cushion his fall. His aim was perfect. 70 feet above ground, he dropped squarely into the shaft of the beam. It was not in operation. He fell and was smashed on the edge of the pit. Gisbella sobbed. Still automatically retaining her grip on Foyle's arm, she ran across the seamed concrete to Sam Quat's body. There she let go of Foyle and touched Quat's head tenderly. Her fingers were stained with blood. Foyle tore at the bandage before his eyes, working eye holes through the gauze. He muttered to himself, listening to Gisbella weep and hearing the shouts behind him from Baker's factory. His hands fumbled at Quat's body. Then he arose and tried to pull Gisbella up.
"Gotta go," he croaked. "Gotta get out, they've seen us."
Gisbella never moved. Foyle mustered all his strength and pulled her upright.
"Times Square," he muttered. "Jaunt, Giz."
Uniformed figures appeared around them. Foyle shook Gisbella's arm and jaunted to Times Square, where masses of jaunters on the gigantic stage stared in amazement at the huge man with the white-bandaged globe for a head. The stage was the size of 2 football fields. Foyle stared around dimly through the bandages. There was no sign of Gisbella, but she might be anywhere. He lifted his voice to a shout.
"Montauk, Giz! Montauk, the folly stage!"
Foyle jaunted with a last thrust of energy and a prayer. An icy nor'easter was blowing in from Block Island and sweeping brittle ice crystals across the stage on the site of a medieval ruin known as Fisher's Folly. There was another figure on the stage. Foyle tottered to it through the wind and the snow. It was Gisbella, looking frozen and lost.
"Thank God," Foyle muttered. "Thank God. Where does Sam keep his weekender?"
He shook Gisbella's elbow.
"Where does Sam keep his weekender?"
"Sam's dead."
"Where does he keep that Saturn weekender?"
"He's retired, Sam is. He's not scared anymore."
"Where's the ship, Giz?"
"In the yards down at the lighthouse."
"Come on."
"Where?"
"To Sam's ship."
Foyle thrust his big hand before Gisbella's eyes. A bunch of radiant keys lay in his palm.
"I took his keys. Come on."
"He gave them to you?"
"I took them off his body."
"Ghoul!"
She began to laugh.
"Liar, lecher, tiger, ghoul. The walking cancer, Gully Foyle."
Nevertheless, she followed him through the snowstorm to Montauk Light. To 3 acrobats wearing powdered wigs, 4 flamboyant women carrying pythons, a child with golden curls and a cynical mouth, a professional duelist in medieval armor, and a man wearing a hollow glass leg in which goldfish swam, Saul Dagenham said, "All right, the operation's finished. Call the rest off and tell them to report back to Courier headquarters." The sideshow jaunted and disappeared. Regis Sheffield rubbed his eyes and asked, "What was that lunacy supposed to be, Dagenham?" "Disturbs your legal mind, huh? That was part of the cast of our FFCC operation. Fun, fantasy, confusion, and catastrophe." Dagenham turned to Presteign and smiled his death's head smile. "I'll return your fee if you like, Presteign." "You're not quitting?" "No, I'm enjoying myself. I'll work for nothing. I've never tangled with a man of Foyle's caliber before. He's unique." "How?" Sheffield demanded. I arranged for him to escape from Joffre Martel. He escaped, all right, but not my way. I tried to keep him out of police hands with confusion and catastrophe. He ducked the police, but not my way. His own way. I tried to keep him out of Central Intelligence's hands with fun and fantasy. He stayed clear, again, his own way. I tried to detour him into a ship so he could make his try for Nomad. He wouldn't detour, but he got his ship. He's on his way now. You're following? Naturally. Dagenham hesitated. But what was he doing in Baker's factory? Plastic surgery? Sheffield suggested. A new face? Not possible. Baker's good, but he can't do a plastic that quick. It was minor surgery. Foyle was on his feet with his head bandaged. The tattoo, Presteign said. Dagenham nodded and the smile left his lips. That's what's worrying me. You realize, Presteign, that if Baker removed the tattooing, we'll never recognize Foyle. My dear Dagenham, his face won't be changed. We've never seen his face. Only the mask. I haven't met the man at all, Sheffield said. What's the mask like? Like a tiger. I was with Foyle for 2 long sessions. I ought to know his face by heart, but I don't. All I know is the tattooing. Ridiculous, Sheffield said bluntly. No. Foyle has to be seen to be believed. However, it doesn't matter. He'll lead us out to Nomad. He'll lead us to your bullion and pyre, Presteign. I'm almost sorry it's all over. Or nearly. As I said, I've been enjoying myself. He really is unique. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 6. I think Foyle's adventures in the cave hospital and afterwards in the freak factory are some of my favorite chapters in an already excellent book. We were introduced to Gisbella McQueen, a complicated and not wholly sympathetic character whose whole life, as much as she could be said to have a life while stuck in the cave, is upended by Foyle as she is dragged in his wake. I can't really blame her for her reaction to him, for while it might seem petty to hate him for his face, she finds herself half unwillingly in love with a brutish monstrosity. Now, Foyle is on the loose, with a ship to get him and Gisbella to Nomad, and the story is only going to heat up more from here. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to my channel. I look forward to reading more of The Star's My Destination and other stories in the future. Have a good night.